Real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to share a new service called Getita that Ken and I have been using that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?
Don't spend a lot on your first product. Do some market research and ultimately just have a good product that people love, because the rest is just like bells and whistles, right? So.
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we continue our interview with Pat Lum discussing strategies in PPC and tactics that are working in 2022. If you didn't listen to part one, go back to last week's episode and tune in. Hope you enjoy the show. So this leads into another question I was wanting to talk to you about, and that is the topic of cannibalizing sales with PPC. And so I will share with you just a general trend that we've observed. One thing that we look at pretty like on a weekly basis is what percentage of our sales came from PPC and what came from organic. And it varies by brand, but we love those brands that have a lot of organic sales, right? And you always hear people say, drive PPC. You may break even at PPC, but that's going to drive organic sales. And at the end of the day, we're interested in generating net income. And so what we've done is we had brands that were running at, say, 15 to 20% tacos. So for our listeners, that would be your ad spend divided by total sales. And we've trimmed that back to between 8 and 10%. And what we've seen in a lot of instances is that our organic sales have increased. And so how does that relate to cannibalizing sales? My thought is that if you could make an organic sale, or Amazon could take a sponsored product ad, charge you, and you still make that sale, they're going to go with the latter because it's going to put more money in their pocket. And so we are constant, like on a weekly basis, asking ourselves, what's the right level of spend for this account? And so what we've done is we've trimmed ad spend until we see that the relationship between organic and PPC sales kind of flatten out. Are we engaging in a thoughtful experiment, or is this mental gymnastics? And are we missing a really important piece of information?
So Tacos is an important one to look at. Generally we think of it as net profit dollars. So net profit dollars per SKU. So any activities that you can do to increase that are helpful. So it's sort of Tacos agnostic in a sense. It goes right to the bottom line and tries to optimize for that, if that makes sense. So, and it's on a SKU level too. So like say a general benchmark would be like a 10% Tacos. So that's actually that's very healthy. That's a mature account that's running. It might not be growing super aggressively because new things aren't being pushed, but 10% is like, even like up to 15, I would say is like a good mature running account that's making money. And then beyond that, what you want to look at in terms of aggressively pushing stuff is net profit dollars per SKU. And that I find to be pretty instructive because that allows you to spend that allows you to have whatever Tacos you want on a SKU level, as long as the organic sales were there to catch you on the other side.
Got it. Okay. That's a helpful way to think about it. To the listeners who tuned out there as we went into the weeds, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, that's really helpful. Ken, over to you.
For sure. And so I want to just turn back the dial a little bit and speak to something Pat said earlier, is that it's almost like you can't polish a turd. And so if you have if your product is just horrible, like none of the stuff we're talking about is going to work. And so like Pat alluded to earlier, like fundamentals, like getting a great product, sourcing a great product, testing it, R&D before you ever get to the point where you're trying to dial in marketing. Super helpful. And I totally agree. Like use those resources on that, as well as conversion rate optimization before ever even trying to go deep into that. So Pat, it's an interesting question, and this is completely anonymous, just at a high level, but in your experience in the last, 10 years of doing business in Amazon, you interact with lots of sellers, products, different accounts. Have you seen any common threads that you've observed? And there'll be two answers. One, A, the top 20%, like who's crushing it, and B, the turds, like what doesn't work?
Yes. So it's a great point you just made in regards to the product. Like the great product is the prerequisite. That's the ticket to entry. So it never wavers. And so just for folks that, if you have a 3.5 star average, a 4-star average, you don't have to do sponsored display right now, right? Like you just fix up the house a little bit and get, and you'll be much happier in the long term. I guess the issue is like, you can run a sponsored display ad now, but you can't talk to your supplier and get the issues fixed and analyze the customer complaints and do that all in 30 seconds. Like it's just work, right? But that's what it takes. In terms of, okay, so I spent a lot of time this past year looking at 6-figure brands versus 7-figure brands, because there's an interesting like gap between them. There's a few things that 6-figure brands are, because even backing up a second, like why is it important to go from 6 to 7 figures? The reason in my estimation is that most sellers are actually not making a lot of money, like actual profit, running a 6-figure Amazon business. After FBA fees, cost of goods, advertising, it's just not that much. So if we want to fire the man and get free and like have total control over financials and time, it's really more towards that 7-figure range where that stuff starts happening, just by virtue of that. Like these businesses they have physical product margins. So it takes a certain amount of scale to sort of get to escape velocity. So it's important, like it's an imperative to get to 7, at least, right? That's a good place to be. And you're also sturdier too. So if a product goes out, you probably have multiple products and you can take a hit too, right? You're just more durable as a business. So if we agree that it's important to go from 6 to 7, the question is how. And I think the first thing is like, to go from 6 to 7, like you start to have to stop being like an owner operator and doing everything yourself. You have to write down some SOPs, Google Docs or Asana. Just don't make it complicated. Just wherever you want to write down instructions for the stuff that you're doing every day. Take it and give it to your team. And it doesn't have to be expensive, right? You think delegation may have to be expensive, but you can find some folks on Upwork or get an agency or just get your nephew to help you out on weekends. Like it can be flexible like that. So you just start getting stuff off your plate and start documenting things. The second thing is like the biggest sellers I've found, I have never seen an enormous seller, like I'm talking like 10 million plus, that didn't have a ton of products. This is another sort of basic truth that people seem to ignore, is like, I call it the many fishhooks theory. Like you're going to have to just launch a ton of stuff in order to scale revenue on Amazon. Don't think that you're going to have 5 products and they're all going to be hits. That's just not the case. Like 1 to 4 to 1 in 5 products will be a hit and carry a lot of revenue in for you. And the rest, you may just have to scale back or discontinue, or there'll be moderate players, but you just have to launch enough stuff in order to get a hit that the algorithms seem to like. And then do that. It's sort of a less pronounced version of like TikToks going viral on social media, where because we're students of these algorithms, like a TikTok will just pick up from an anonymous account and get 1 million views. That's a very real reality on that platform. On Amazon, it's a little bit less exaggerated, but you'll still see that 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 products will be really good. And then the rest just won't take off for whatever reason. And it's being sort of agnostic about that and just acknowledging that reality and then launching a bunch of products. And they don't all necessarily have to be closely related, and brand building and that sort of thing. I would, err more on the side of, pursue opportunities as you find them. Yeah. So SOPs and documentation and just launching a ton of stuff, I think are 2 good places to start. And then the stuff that you launch has to be good, to our points.
Now, Pat, one thing you said that I definitely agree with is getting stuff off your plate and kind of getting out of the mindset of an owner operator. When I look at my business, the first one I started, there's several inflection points, either where something went really well or something went very badly. One of the first inflection points that I had was when I hired Asteroid X. I remember talking to Ken. Ken was the one that recommended them, or recommended you guys. And he said, "What are you doing for PPC?" And I said, "I self-manage it. I'm really good at spreadsheets. I'm a CPA." And he was like, "Well, how are you doing? Are you profitable?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." What it made me realize was you can be really good at spreadsheets, and not good at PPC. They're two different skill sets. One may help with the other, and that was something that if you look at my revenue and income, that was a big inflection point early on. And so can you tell us more about Asteroid X, the services that you provide, and the typical customer that would be a good fit for Asteroid X?
Yeah, it's, again, because we're an advertising company, so we can't fix the product. So that part is on the brands to bring. We just recently saw, like, and again, results not typical, but we saw a $0 to $20,000 a month revenue increase. This is total revenue in about 45 days, just because the product was so good. Like, there's more shoppers on Amazon than ever, and so it's an interesting opportunity for that reason. But it's based on product, and the whole door hinges on product. It's a small hinge that moves a big door. And so, yeah, in terms of our work, like, we're Amazon advertising specialists. It's all we do. And that's all we've been doing for about 6 years now, 7 years, because it is one of those, once you have a good product, it's a very powerful point of leverage to scale an Amazon business. It's pretty much what, yeah. I'm just curious, for you guys, like, what were some of the other inflection points that you found in your sort of journey so far?
I have a couple. So
Sure.
going from self-managing PPC to hiring somebody, I would say, but the one before that was just hiring somebody to take 10 hours of work off of my plate a week, having one VA. That was huge, especially because I was working a full-time job. And so I could give an hour of instruction and have 10 hours of work completed. And that was another one. I would also say, like, hiring in areas that I was weak and I knew I was weak. Photoshop is an example of this. I spent 2 complete weekends, like 12-hour days, trying to learn Photoshop. At the end of those 2 weekends, I was still not great at Photoshop. And so I think, like, a lot around team building. And then I would also set brand registry was one where getting a trademark, it was a pain, but that we saw our conversion rate go up quite a bit from that. And I would say most recently it's been international expansion. However, you'll need to check back with me in a year and I'll tell you which ones we really like and which ones we don't.
Yeah.
If you ask me today, like, as I sit here recording this, I'm a huge fan of Canada. I'm not quite sure about UK, and Germany has been a tough country to import into. That opinion is subject to change. Sorry to interrupt the episode. You may have heard Ken and I talking recently about a new tool that we're using for Amazon refunds. Now, I have used other refund tools like this. However, I can tell you in the first 7 days, they scrubbed the back end of my Amazon account going back 18 months and found $5,000 of refunds. And the nice thing about this is it's my money. Amazon made a mistake and they are just auditing my account. The other thing I really like about this tool is there is no monthly fee. They only charge a commission if they are successful in getting you your money. Go to Getida.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM for Firing the Man, FTM400. This is an awesome tool. Can't say enough good things about it. Now, back to the episode. So, Ken, what about you?
Those are good ones.
Yeah. So I've got a couple that David did not hit on. One would be, I'll give two. One is like a revenue jump, and the second one is like a time take back. Like, I got more of my time, which is happiness, and I'm able to work on a higher level stuff. So I would say, whenever we hired an operations manager to manage, I think we were at either 8 or 10 employees at the time. And so David and I were like, each had 4 or 5 direct reports, and we hired an operations manager who kind of took that role. And so it freed up a ton of time. And so that was not a revenue spike, but I got a lot of time back. And then another, I would say, is having mature processes. And this goes hand in hand with saying no. And so I think over time, I have shiny object syndrome. I love software. I love, like, cool shit. And so over time, I think I'm getting better at taking all, because the marketers of the world, the Pats and everybody, are throwing all this stuff at us. Oh, these shiny, right? And so, like, you have to be really good at, like, testing some things, figuring out what actually works, and then implementing that. And so, like, I've got a stack of stuff here. Anytime I go to, like, a conference or something, you're getting all this stuff and then whittling it down to, like, what can you plug in and make work right away that will help your business. I think that's something that you can develop over time. I'm still not the best at it. I'm getting good. And I would say, like, mature processes, that really spikes revenue quite a bit. It's like, hey, just do more of what's working and create processes for it and then repeat that. So
When you say mature processes as opposed to like processes, you're talking about like kind of scaled out versions of an existing process, like to up the volume versus like do something different.
yeah, to put it into a more context, like say you develop a process on a Google Doc, 6 months ago, and then you wait 6 months, you go back in and then you write it and update it and refine it to what's working now. And then do that a couple of times. And by the time the third time you do, that's a pretty mature process that you've ran through the ringer several times. And so that's been pretty helpful.
Oh, that's a cool concept, mature process. Okay.
I would also add to that mature processes is if you were to give that SOP to somebody in your company that has no previous experience, all the questions that they have as they're going through it identifies the holes you have. And if they can go through it start to finish with no previous experience, then you've got a good process. And ultimately, that's what you want, right? Like employee A is out sick. Employee B, we need you to fill in. Here's exactly what to do. And so it's an ever evolving process. And honestly, hiring an operations manager has been key for us to get that off the ground. So
do you guys like video walkthroughs for SOP? This is my partner and I disagree about this because he's like, if we write down text, it's more scalable because you can change text really quickly. And if the text is concise, somebody could run the SOP. But I've more been a fan of like images and video, but it's very hard to change after the fact. Do you guys have a take on it?
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
My opinion is a video is better than nothing. And we have a lot of people in our company that will make a Loom video or screen recording, whatever you use. But if you ask them to sit down and take screenshots and write out everything, it's just not going to get done or not going to get done in time. And so I think Loom videos are a good thing. You can also outsource this where you have a Loom video, give it to somebody, then they take the screenshots and then type up the text. And so, but I think a process is better than no process.
Yeah, I would just follow up that with, I think a mature process is like typed out and refined over time. Whereas a video, like David said, if you have nothing, have your team write down the 10 tasks they do and just go create a 2 to 5 minute video for it. They can do that in an hour and then at least you're out of the gate with something. But you can't, you're not going to have a video editor like edit videos or, in the space we're in, like softwares are constantly changing. Amazon's software constantly every time I log in, there's a new dashboard, there's a new thing here. And so screenshots and videos over time, they're going to be, legacy.
Yeah. Now, one question I want to get into before we get into the fire round is, Pat, you invited us to be a guest on your podcast, and you got a lot of great content. Pat Lum is the handle on YouTube, and I'd encourage our audience to go check it out. But one of the things that when we were done recording, I asked Ken, hey, did you notice anything different about Pat? And one thing that we've noticed just through Zoom is that from a physical standpoint, you have changed. You have made incredible progress. Look like you've put on a lot of muscle. And I know that doesn't just happen. And about 2 years ago, we had a conversation. You were doing a program called 75 Hard. And so can you talk about this process, this transformation, and, what areas in your life have you seen the benefit? And then also kind of speak to the entrepreneurs that say, and I've been this person a lot of times, who say, I'm super busy building a business. I don't have time to exercise. So give us your thoughts on this.
We've all been there. We've all been that person at various points. There's no shame in it at all. So I think, so 75 Hard I've done a few times. It's a program by Andy Frisella, who's actually an e-commerce entrepreneur as well. He has a supplement company. I believe they have over $100 million run rate. And he's put out just a challenge, just a general challenge to build discipline in folks. And so it's 5 simple tasks. So it's 2 workouts every day. Each workout is 45 minutes. One of them has to be outdoors. One of them's outdoors to show you that it's okay to work out in the rain. Nothing bad's going to happen to you, kind of thing. Right? Stick to a diet. So this could be any diet that you choose. For me personally, in the last round, I used something called the Perfect Health Diet, which is from some Harvard researchers. You can look that up. But you got to stick to the diet strictly. There's no cheat meals. So there's no chocolate, no candy, no sugar, no fried foods, nothing like that. No alcohol also. A progress picture a day, which has the psychological effect of sort of visually tracking progress. And you have a sweet before and after too, if on day 1 versus day 75, 10 pages of reading from a nonfiction book. So for me, I read business books or, marketing books or whatever, but you could read just anything as long as it's nonfiction. And then there's one more I know I'm missing. Right. A gallon of water a day. So this is what I have for that. This is a 2-liter bottle. I'll drink 2 of these a day. And And the thing is, I still have this bottle. The stuff sticks. Like after it ends, are you going to start actively dehydrating yourself based on what you're used to? No, absolutely not. Like, so the stuff sticks. And just in terms of general fitness, if people are familiar with like bulk and cut cycles, this is great for a cut. So it's great for lowering body fat percentage while retaining the muscle that you have. And then for bulking, I'll use just Google strong lifts 5x5. Again, if you just talk about the basics, like this is a program that focuses on basic compound lifts. So deadlifts and barbell rows, presses, bench press. Like I think there's about probably 5 exercises in this thing. And you do 3 of them in a workout and that's it, right? But that gets, because they're compounds and they focus on large parts of the body with barbells, it's simple as that, right? So those are my 2 sort of fitness, I guess, frameworks, one for the bulk and one for the cut. Yeah. And I've probably, in my early 20s, I probably, I was about maybe 145 to 150 pounds. And now I'm about 185, maybe.
Nice.
Give or take.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah. So to set the stage to the listeners who's not on our YouTube, well, for one, go to YouTube and watch this. But for 2, I'll paint a picture. The last time we were on a Zoom call with Pat, after the call, David said, "Hey, Ken, did you notice anything different about Pat?" I said, "Yeah, Pat looks like a linebacker now." And so 145 to 185. That's a pretty good jump, man. That's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
That's awesome. We talk about ROAS, return on ad spend. What's been your ROAT, return on training, in terms of energy level, business? What have been some benefits that you've felt as you've stepped up your game in this department?
One thing that's taught me is that there's always extra time in the day. Now, I don't have kids yet, right? I want them, but I don't have them yet. You guys tell me better. But like, it seems like, the day is full. It couldn't possibly get any fuller. And then I imagine you have kids and then you got to take care of that. And you still manage to get everything done. So it just goes to show that, there's enough time in the day for everything. I think what this taught me was, you can do 2 45-minute workouts a day and still get everything done that you need to get done in the business. And the other thing was like, it trained me on a constant, repetitive, like one unidirectional, like grind mode where basically like for me, just personally for our business, like I've been posting, I sort of made a resolution to post something online every day, content wise. And I started on August 1st, 2022, and I've committed myself for a year, right? So I'm going to post online every day for a year, right? YouTube Shorts, TikTok, stuff like that. And I started on August 1st. And because of the discipline that was instilled in me from 75 Hard, it's been relatively easy to just post every day. You record when you're tired. You record when you're sick. You record when you don't feel like recording. You get in front of the camera and you try to help some folks on the internet. So that pattern sort of carried over from physical discipline. Mental discipline can follow. And it's just really easy and tangible to train physical stuff. So that's why going from physical to mental is probably easier than psyching yourself up and trying to get mental motivation out of nowhere. The physical just helps things run like a machine would run. And ironically, you'd think it's mechanical, but also within those confines, there is room for creativity. So you sort of create open space within the confines of some discipline. Yeah. So that's what it's been. And aesthetically, I mean, I don't really care. I'm more interested in like lifting heavier weights because I'm like stupid or something, where I feel like I just like, if I could push, 315, then that would be cool. Like, it's just kind of dumb, but there's no rhyme or reason to that. I don't know. I don't know what that's about. Yeah.
Well, very nice. Very nice. Right. Well, Ken, anything else before we get into the fire round?
No, I think we're good. I think we had a well-rounded chat. We talked PPC, high level, low level. We talked breakdancing. We talked lifting. I mean, we fitness, mental. Yeah. Or a well-rounded chat. So are you ready for the fire round, Pat?
Let's do it.
What is your favorite book?
You've caught me in my study. So current favorite, okay, is this one. It's called Working Backwards. 2 Amazon executives, this is the plot. Two Amazon executives leave Amazon, start a consultancy, and start teaching businesses about Amazon's own internal business processes. I don't even know how they got the blessing for this, but they must have. Yeah. And so it's a pretty good size as well. Like stuff about Amazon's internal business processes around narratives, 1-page narrative writing, how they manage people, their hiring process. I use this exact hiring process because it's so good at removing bias from hiring. And so I just love it. It's really great. And it's a recent publication as well. I think this is the last 5 years, maybe 2021. So pretty fresh off the presses. Honorable mentions are Good to Great, which it gets cited a lot for good reason. Again, it's an emphasis on people and team building. And I think it's very instructive. And if you're feeling philosophical, a little bit out to lunch, but in a good way. I haven't finished this one yet, but this is Finite and Infinite Games. The theory is that there's 2 types of games in this world: finite, which you're trying to win and you're trying to end it, and infinite, which the players just play in that game for its own sake. And it's fun. And the goal of the game is just to continue playing. And I think it's just an interesting philosophy. Yeah. A vision of life is play and possibility. So just to balance out all the hard-nosed business stuff. So there's 3 for you.
That's awesome. Very cool. What are your hobbies?
On the strength training piece. So I wasn't strength training for no reason. Like I wanted to strength train because I wanted to fight. And so in the last year, I picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is fantastic. Because I knew I was going to get crushed at 145, 150. So I had to bulk up. So I did. And now I've been on the mats, just fighting some guys.
Awesome.
It's all in good fun. So yeah, it's good activity. Yeah.
Very cool. What is the one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
I have very little corporate experience. So I worked at a clothing store and I worked at an ice cream shop, and everyone was really nice the whole time. So I don't, I guess I got really lucky where people were just really nice and kind and didn't give me any problems. So the man for me is more just like the man that you could become if you did all the right stuff. So that's
awesome.
Not the title of this podcast, but it's too long. The firing the man that you would have been if you were never the guy. Yeah.
All right. Last one. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Give up, fail, or never get started. There was a venture capitalist, I forget which one, but a noted one. And they were like, hey, do you think entrepreneurs should drop out of college to pursue their careers? And he's like, you know what? I have a blanket policy where any entrepreneur that asks me if they should drop out, I say, don't do it. And he said, this accomplishes 2 things. Like every entrepreneur that is destined to drop out and has the drive to drop out will drop out anyway, regardless of what I say. And the ones that were not meant to will stay in school, and that's fine. And they were meant to be in school because they don't, So I think part of it is about just self-determining what you really want to do. And there's no shame in never getting started. Like maybe you actually really don't want to get started, and that's okay, right? Because if what you're doing is working and you like it, then you just do that, right? But so that's about getting started. Like about getting started. If you are going to get started, you should. And if you're not, then some part of you does not actually want to get started in the first place. I think that's where I'm going with that. And for those starting on the e-commerce track, don't spend a lot on your first product. Do some market research and ultimately have a good product that people love, because the rest is just like bells and whistles. Right? So
awesome. Very cool. David, over to you.
Pat, I want to thank you for being a second-time guest on the Firing the Man podcast. This has been a lot of fun and a conversation I've really enjoyed. If people are interested in getting in touch with Asteroid X and considering outsourcing their PPC agency, what would be the best way?
Sure. Just head over to AsteroidX.com. So ASTEROID X.com. Yeah. Or just check us out on YouTube. David, Ken, and I also had another chat. If you search that on YouTube, it'll pop right up. We just have a good time. Like it's just fun. Right? So,
definitely. Well, thank you so much, Pat. We really appreciate it and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks. We'll see you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's Firing the Man podcast. If you like this episode, head on over to firingtheman.com and check out our resource library for exclusive Firing the Man discounts on popular e-commerce subscription services. That is firingtheman.com/resource. You can also find a comprehensive library of over 50 books that Ken and I have read in the last few years that have made a meaningful impact on our business. For that, head on over to www.firingtheman.com/library. Lastly, check us out on social media at Firing the Man and on YouTube at Firing the Man for exclusive content. This is David Schomer.
And Ken Wilson.
We're out. Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?